Good afternoon and welcome to our National Leadership Day webinar number 2. My name is Bill Wilde. I'm the Director of Development and Marketing for Church World Service, and I'm thrilled that you could join us today. As many of you probably know, this is our first ever series of national webinars around both the work of Church World Service, which was earlier today, as well as learning from each other, which is this session of the Crop Hunger Walk webinar. Today we're going to be we're going to be hearing from 3 different people who will be talking about different ways to help in your work as you organize crop hunger walks in your local communities and share some models of things that they have done. A couple of things I want to say around housekeeping to get them out of the way first. You're all muted, as you heard, and that's just to minimize background noise. We will take questions at the very end of this webinar after the 3 presenters have finished. And if you want to ask a question, you need to type the question in. You'll notice on your on the webinar section, you'll see a part that says questions. Just click on that and then type your question in, and we'll run through as many of the questions as we can at the end. We may not get to all of your questions, but we will do our best to get to as many as possible. All of you should have received an email with handouts for the sessions today, and those went out by email to those of you who registered, and there should also be copies of those for those of you who are joining us in a larger group. There should be copies of those handouts there as well. Just one other piece for you to know is that depending upon the connection speed of where you are, the screen may display itself a little more slowly for some, and our presenters are just going to move forward as they see the screen coming up. So we hope that that'll come up quickly enough that it'll keep up with what they're saying and what you're seeing. I do want to know how thrilled we are you've joined us. I've been involved in crop hunger walks since I was a junior in high school. Since none of you can see me, I will tell you that that was a very long time ago. And I am as enthusiastic about crop hunger walks today as I was when I first started working on them back when I was in high school. And I just want to say that one of the things I think that engages most of us as staff is our ability to work with each of you, because I think in our lives, you're the people that really make our work worthwhile. Besides what the funds are able to do around the world, our chance as staff to engage with each of you who volunteer your time, volunteer your efforts, and who provide money and support for crop hunger walks, you're the ones that make a difference, and you really do change people's lives around the world. So what we want to help you do now is to be able to do what you do even better. We have 3 people joining us today. The first presenter will be Judy House, talking about the lead recruiter model. She'll be followed by Suzanne Dysart, who will be talking about online fundraising, and then followed by Larry Jackson talking about incentivizing your walk. Let me introduce Judy to you. Judy House has been the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Crop Hunger Walk. She's been with that walk since 2007. She began working as the recruiter for her church, and then she was asked to be a lead recruiter, which meant she's responsible for several churches. She served as recruitment chair for 2 years and is now entering her 2nd year as chair of the planning committee. During her tenure, she has seen her local crop hunger walk grow from less than 1,000 walkers to approximately 2,000, with donations increasing from about $47,000 to more than $106,000. Their walk is recognized as the 4th largest crop hunger walk in the Southeast and the 5th largest in the United States. Judy is a retired public school teacher who is presently teaching part-time at Forsyth Technical Community College. She's married, has 5 children, and 3 grandchildren. Judy, thank you so much for joining us today and for your willingness to share what you've learned in your particular walk.
Thank you, Bill. I want to thank everyone for joining us for the Lead Recruiters model. I'm going to be explaining how we organize and manage our walk teams using this model. And I want you to keep in mind that our walk consists of about 2,000 walkers with between 80 and 100 teams. And our walk is always held the 3rd Sunday in October. Next slide. First, I want to kind of lay a foundation with our planning committee organization. We have between 10 and 12 members on our planning committee, and one of those members is designated as the recruitment chair. The recruitment chair sets up a subcommittee of lead recruiters, and we select our lead recruiters mainly by their connection with specific groups in our community. The lead recruiters meet and select their own walk teams that they're going to be responsible for. And most of the lead recruiters are responsible for specific denominations, or some will take schools or businesses or other organizations or groups, small denominational groups together. The lead recruiters also meet separately from the planning committee, and the recruitment chair acts as the liaison between the two committees. I want you to also keep in mind that this model we've developed over the past 5 years with 3 different recruitment chairs working closely together to build this method up. So the role of the lead recruiter is, once they have selected their teams, each one's given a notebook, which we implemented this year and we will be covering later in this presentation. And on the next 2 slides, we'll be talking about how they carry out their duties. So the roles and responsibilities of the lead recruiter, starting on slide 4, their immediate goal once they have their teams is to contact their teams and get the walk date on the calendars for the churches and organizations, and update their contact information. And I have also provided a slide which will be in a couple more down the road of what we use to keep our information together for our whole walk. They send completed contact forms to the recruitment chair, and this person keeps a master notebook and with all the forms, and then also sends a copy to our data entry clerk, who keeps a database current that we really depend on highly. And I'll mention more about that also later. They attend regular meetings. We only have to meet in April, June, July, August, November, and January. And they answer questions and provide assistance to the recruiters of the teams, or find someone else to help them. And they notify the teams of upcoming events, such as our recruiters trainings. If they need additional training, we have our recruiter rally, which we call a lunch and learn. Of course, the walk in October, and then we offer an awards reception in February. Okay, on the next slide we continue. They get all this information in their notebook on slide 5. They also are expected to give input on what is needed in the recruitment packets, and they help stuff those, and that's done in July and August. In early August, they call their teams and invite them to the Lunch and Learn, as well as sending them an invitation. Our Lunch and Learn, or Recruiters Rally, is held the end of August. They assist with the Lunch and Learn. They set up and clean up, and they host tables, and they work the additional tables, like our materials packets and T-shirt presentations, and all those things. They follow up with their teams that didn't make it to the recruitment rally and make sure that everyone has their packets. They follow up that, and then after the walk in October, they thank their teams for participating in the walk and invite them to the February awards reception. For the February awards reception, they meet and they plan, and they plan the reception, and then they set it up and clean up. And they always keep the recruitment chair notified of any pertinent information about their teams. This next slide is the contact information form that I mentioned earlier. There is a blank copy and also a mock-up copy in your handouts. And this contact form shows all kinds of information that we keep for each walk team. One copy is kept by the lead recruiter, and a copy is made for the recruitment chair, who keeps these in the master notebook. And we use this, the recruitment chair uses this when they sign out, when the recruiters sign out their materials and their walker envelopes. So we will always double check to make sure everybody's got everything they need. Then again, a copy of this is forwarded to the database, or the data entry clerk, who puts all the information in the database. We like to keep the updated information and who walks each year and the number of walkers they have each year and the amount that they raise each year. And this also helps us to see over time who the active teams in our area are and who are prospective teams and who might be inactive ones that walked once upon a time and then dropped off. And that lets us know who we need to give some extra attention to get them back involved in the walk. Okay, on slide 7, we provide this in the notebook for all the lead recruiters. This is just a call checklist that helps them know when they make their calls what they should be doing. And this is also in your handouts. When they call, they get it on the calendar, like I said, and they verify the contact information. They also, at that time, offer extra training. If the recruiters are new and they feel like they need some additional information, we will set up additional training for them. And then down at number 8, we also are delighted to have speakers come out and speak to a congregation or a civic organization or a school club or Sunday school class, and so they will find out about that and contact the planning committee, and we will get someone to go out and present about the crop walk and church world service to them. And then, of course, they always thank their teams for participating in the walk.
Judy,
Yes.
Judy, not to interrupt you, but we did have a few people who said they're having a difficulty hearing you, so if there's any way you can speak louder or closer to the mic, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, on this next slide, this is the recruiter's timeline, and I would like to say we also use this method for our whole planning committee. We set up a step-by-step timeline of what the lead recruiter has to do and by what date, and a copy of this is available in the packet in case you want to take a closer look at it. This helps us, we find, keep all of ourselves organized so we don't skip anything, and it lets us know what we need to be doing by when. Now on the next slide, this is a breakdown quarterly of what we do, and since our walk is in October, we really we want to start in the second quarter, April, May, June. The lead recruiters have their initial meeting early in April, and that's when they divide up their teams. And they start calling, and we give them from April till June to contact all of their teams. And then when we have a meeting in June, if there's still someone out there having trouble getting in touch with their teams, we'll swap around. Maybe sometimes a different person, you might know somebody from that community, that church or something, and you're able to get in touch with them a little better, so we'll swap off. Then in July, August, and September, in the July meeting, that's where we decide what's going to be included in the recruiter packets for that year, and we start making plans for our lunch and learn for late August. Then early in August, we meet and we stuff all the recruiter packets. And then by the end of August, all of that's ready, and we have our lunch and learn where they completely take care of that for us with set up, clean up, and manning all the tables. Then in September, we start, in September, we keep talking with our recruiters and provide any additional support information that might help them make their walk successful. And then also in September, we make plans for the day of the walk. Then that brings us down to the fourth quarter. Of course, October is the big day. And so they have their duties assigned, and they're there for our walk. And then within a couple of days of the walk, we have usually a dinner meeting, and we will print out large-size postcards thanking with a generic thank you. But then we leave some white space for every lead recruiter to write a personal note to their recruiters or ministers, and then we mail those out. November, the end of November is cutoff for all funds to be in, and if they have some teams that haven't turned in their funds yet, then they're responsible for contacting their teams to remind them to get their money in. Then that brings us back up to the top of this slide for the first quarter. In January, we have a a joint meeting between the planning committee and the recruitment committee, and we plan our our reception that is given at the end of February, where we recognize groups and individuals that did an outstanding job in participating in the walk. And also during this January time, this is when the recruitment chair starts replacing, or as our walk grows, we end up having to up the number of lead recruiters. And so the recruitment chair is building up the lead recruiters team during that time also, so that by the 1st of April, they're already in place and ready to start their whole new year over again. On the next slide, this has been very well received this year. I mentioned we implemented a notebook where we tried to keep everything together for our lead recruiters, and there were 5 tabs in that notebook. The first tab was a list of the committee members where we had names, addresses, phone numbers, and email. So anytime you needed to contact somebody, it was right there at your fingertips. Tab 2 was their job descriptions, which you saw on slides 4 and 5, and the timeline, so they would know what they were supposed to be doing at all times. Tab 3 is where they kept their agendas and minutes and any notes they took from all of the meetings. In tab 4, this is where they kept their personal contact forms with their personal notes for each of their teams. And then tab 5, we try to put information in there that will be right at the lead recruiter's fingertips to help them answer questions and concerns when they get phone calls from their recruiter teams. And so some of the samples of that would be like a copy of our website, so they can refer them to certain spots on the website. And then we keep in there a sheet, steps to an effective walk, how to organize a walk in a local congregation, and clergy support tips. Okay, and then our last slide, I've provided my email and phone number and our website if you'd like to copy those down. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact me, and I'll be glad to help you out. And while you're copying that down, I'd just like to say, remember, it took us 5 years to develop this. We've been very happy with what we've done. And you shouldn't think that you have to do all this at one time, but you should start with the chair and have the chair get some lead recruiters. And we feel the ideal number is 1 lead recruiter for each 5 teams. Of course, some take more and some have less, depending on who they're assigned to. And we also think that the timeline of events and sequential steps to the process are very important, and you should consider doing this and developing this as you go. And keep a list of the teams that you want to target and records on those that do participate. And develop a database. We use our database for everything. We're constantly keeping it updated, and we use that for filling out the contact forms for the initial April meeting for the lead recruiters. And we also use it anytime we have mass mailings. We can print our labels right from our database. And some things that we have learned in the process of all this is you need to keep adding lead recruiters as you go and grow. The more you have, the better it is. And be consistent with your lead recruiters. If you give a lead recruiter all the Methodist churches this year, it would behoove you to use that same lead recruiter for the Methodist churches next year, because they start developing a real close relationship with those churches, and they start learning the little ins and outs of that congregation or that club, and it really makes a difference. And you need strong organizational skills and good record keeping are vital. So when you pick your first chair for the recruiters, you need to make sure they're a very organized person if you're going to set up some system like this. So I'd like to thank you for listening, and I hope this will help you in organizing your walk further. And James, I'd really like to thank you for providing this for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And I know that we'll be coming back to you at the end because I see folks have put in quite a few questions. So you'll have some questions to answer. I want to also tell folks that both Judy and now Suzanne have given their email addresses at the end. So if we don't get to all of your questions, you can feel free to email them with the questions you have. I'm sure they're more than willing to correspond with you and help both of you help each other to help your crop hunger walks to grow. Our next presenter is Suzanne Dysart. She first walked in a crop hunger walk in Boone, North Carolina, while she was in college at Appalachian State University. After college, she participated in a couple of walks in Charlotte, North Carolina, and later she moved to Boulder, Colorado. After 1 year of walking, she was recruited to the organizing committee. From 1999 through 2010, she was involved in various roles of organizing the Boulder Walk. During her involvement, the money raised almost tripled, and the number of walkers more than doubled. Suzanne was quite successful in personal fundraising and was the top online crop hunger walk fundraiser in the United States for several years. She's been fortunate enough to make several trips, and she has seen our crop hunger walk money in action in Vietnam, Kenya, and Indonesia. She now lives with her life partner Dennis and 2 ferrets, Simon and Lucy, in Lakewood, Colorado. Suzanne, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Bill. So welcome, everyone. And what I'm going to do today is share some of my not-so-secret secrets on how I have been successful in raising even more money for crop hunger walks with using online giving. So next slide, please. So there's several reasons that I've found that online makes sense and makes life easier for everyone. First of all, it's easier for the walker. So as a walker, you can do both a combination of online and traditional fundraising, or you could just go online. And with the website, it keeps up with your donations, so you don't have to fill out the envelope and keep track of all that. The donations are made directly through the website, so you don't have to keep up with cash or checks. And it gives you additional ways to ask for donations, because this way you can ask in person, you can ask through email, you can ask through social networking, through Facebook, or whatever other method you use. So it gives you several different avenues to reach out to folks. Next slide. It's also easier for the donor. So my very first foray into online donations for crop hunger walks was I had a coworker who was in the UK many years ago, and as I tend to do around crop hunger walk time, I talk to everyone. I'm enthusiastic about what's going on, and I'm trying to raise lots of money. So Nigel said, I would love to sponsor you, but is there a way I can do it online? And of course that made sense. It was much easier for him to go online from the UK than to try and send me a check or send me money that was not in U.S. currency and to have to do all that. Back in those days, it was before Church World Service had paired up with the online services, so we actually had to go through the basic Church World Service website and do something that way. And honestly, I'm not even sure if we ever got his donation tracked to our walk in Boulder. So now it's much easier now that we have all the online facilities set up. The other thing is that over the years since I worked with Nigel to make that donation, so many different organizations and so many different walks are now using online donations. So people are used to it. Back in the beginning, I found that sometimes people were hesitant about it and that kind of thing. These days, people are very used to it. So, you aren't asking most people to do something that they aren't already familiar with and comfortable with. Another thing that I've found is if you walk up to someone and say, hey, will you sponsor me in the crop hunger walk, and they reach in their wallet or their pocket to see what cash they have, sometimes they don't have a lot of cash on hand, or at least not much that they're wanting to hand out. So I found that if you are approaching people online, I have tended to get larger donations because they are not limited to what cash they have on hand. It also just makes it easier in that in some cases people traditionally like to write checks, and in some cases they might then have to mail that to you. Again, it's much easier. They go right online, they do what they need to do, and they don't have to do all those additional steps. The other thing that's easier for the donor is sometimes the person wants to get their receipt. Well, through the online donations, they're going to have an automatic record of that receipt of that donation so that they can use that at tax time. So that just makes it easier for the donor as well. Next slide, please. And then we found it easier for the walk. As the Boulder Walk grew and grew, it was a good problem to have, but it meant that there was lots of money to collect and there was lots of money to count at the end. As the online donations started to grow, we found that even though the walk was growing, we were having less money to count and less money to collect. And that made it easier for us. Again, like I said, with the records of donations online, that made it easier because the donors already had their record of that and they weren't trying to get that information from the walk itself. You can also use the website to share information about the walk. So you can give updates through that. People can also see how many donations are being raised throughout the time of the walk. And it's just an easy way to share information. So we found it was easier for the walk as well. Next slide, please. So how does this work for those of you who haven't tried this yet? When you go to the cropwalk.org website, you'll see there's a map there in the lower left-hand corner of the screenshot that I put up there. What you do is you select your state, and once you drill down on that, it will show you a list of all of the crop hunger walks that are going on in the state. You then drill down into your walk. At that point, you would either create a team or you would find your team. What we do with our recruiters is we ask them, as soon as we have the recruiter kickoff, we ask them to go ahead and set up their team website. And we've even had computers available at the recruiter kickoff to give people an opportunity to do it right then and there so they don't have to think about it when they go home. They can go ahead and get that team page started. If you are participating as part of a team, you would then click into your team and then create your page. You can also walk as an individual contributor, and you would just create your own page from there. So then you have your own personal page, and with that page you have a link. So you can either send out emails through the website, or you can also send your own personal emails with a link to the website as well. And I generally found that a combination of the two was best. Sometimes, especially in this day and age, people get so many emails that they're suspicious of ones that come from sources they might not be familiar with. So if they've given in the past, seeing a email from Crop Hunger Walks might be familiar to them. If they haven't, having something that actually comes from your personal email account sometimes works a little bit better. But I always try multiple techniques to make sure we get to people. Next slide, please. I also find it's important to make it personal. Now, you may not have a Crop Hunger Walk sign that you've taken somewhere exotic like this. As my friends know now, when I travel, I tend to carry a Crop Hunger Walk sign with me and take pictures in really cool places. It makes it fun, and it got my donors always looking for where I had been the past year to see where I had carried my sign. But you don't need that. You could put, if you have a picture of you walking in a past Crop Hunger Walk, you could put that on your page. You could also just put a picture of yourself. There are pictures that you can pick that are just generic pictures, but I find the more personal your web page is, the more it reaches out to folks and they really feel like you're invested in the cause. Another part of making it personal is you want to sponsor yourself. So make that donation sponsoring yourself and getting things started that way. And another way that I make it personal is that I ask people to be part of my team. Not necessarily as walkers, although you can have a team of walkers, but in general when I'm talking to my donors, I talk about it as join my team in what I'm doing, because I think that just gives it a better sense of what you're really trying to raise the money for. Next slide, please. So now you've got all these techniques on how to raise money. Now, how do you raise more money? Well, my first technique is I ask everybody. So first of all, you're going to want to get your site started. So sponsor yourself. That's always a good way to get that first donation on there. And then also it's a good idea to get another first donor to set the pace. So if you're thinking that, okay, you're really going to try to get maybe $20 from each one of your sponsors, if you can find someone who might make a donation of maybe $30, a little bit more than what you're hoping your average donation is going to be, you don't want it outrageous because then that's going to scare everybody and they're going to think, oh my gosh, I can't sponsor her for $100. So if you can find someone who will do $30, that sets a good starting point, because I've found that people say, well, how much should I donate? Well, that's a very personal question, but they also kind of just want to see what the pace is. So if they see that there's a $30 donation out there, they're like, okay, I'll go for the $20 to $30 range, and it just kind of sets a nice bar for folks. And again, you want to ask everybody. Think about anybody you interact with who might be interested in joining you in your quest. Family, friends, businesses you frequent. I ended up, asking, as you can see from my picture, the guy who puts tires on my car every year. I interact with him twice a year because I switch from summer to winter tires. So I would ask him if he would sponsor me, and guess what? He did. Person who cuts your hair, you interact with them all year long. You're sitting there, you're talking about what's going on. You bring up Crop Hunger Walk. My doctor sponsored me. You just ask anybody. The worst thing that you do is you ask them and you tell them what you're doing, and they aren't interested. No big deal. You've talked a little bit about what's going on. It's not a bad thing. Coworkers. The thing there you have to be careful of is your office policies for whether you can ask for that kind of thing. My advice there is just be careful. Try to follow the policies, but you can skirt around them as much as you can get away with, and sort of on your own about how you want to deal with that. But there are ways to ask folks, even if you don't go through work emails. And again, pretty much anybody you can think of. By online giving, you aren't restricted to people that you see regularly. You aren't restricted to the folks that you are going to see in your community. Crop Hunger Walks are locally based, but a large portion of the money goes globally. So don't limit yourself to your friends and family and neighbors who are right around the corner. Reach out to folks all over the country. The cause is still, global hunger fighting is good for everyone. One of the other things I found was that with online giving, people would ask other people. So my mom, back when I was doing sort of the traditional giving, would write me a check. She lived across the country. She would write me a check, but never felt comfortable, or I think even considered, telling people, oh, my daughter's walking in the Crop Hunger Walk, and would you be interested in sponsoring her? Once we had online giving going on, and I had an email that I would send to her, she did feel comfortable forwarding that on to a couple of other people. It's a very easy way just to put the information out there. You aren't standing in front of someone saying, hey, will you sponsor me? And they have to say no if they don't feel comfortable with that. So they are right there, and you can have the emails then end up just increasing the number of folks. So there were several people from my mom's office, and then even after she wasn't working there anymore, who continued to sponsor me over the times. I generally ask anyone that I send a Christmas card to. I figure those are all people that I care about, who are interested in what I'm doing, and it's just a great way to interact with them one other time throughout the year. So setting goals is important. I always would like to have a goal out there. It gave me an idea of what I was trying to shoot for. You can do goals in a variety of ways. You could do an amount of money. You can do a number of donors, whatever you feel comfortable with. But it's just a nice way to kind of set something out there. Also, on the online giving page, you're going to have the ability to have a thermometer that will show how you're tracking towards your goal if you want to do that. Next slide, please. And then it's important to share your goal. So I've set a goal of I'm going to raise this much money. If you share that goal with folks, it does kind of make it that whole team feeling again, like I was talking about earlier. So you aren't really asking people to sponsor you. You're kind of putting a different twist on it. You're saying, will you help me in meeting this goal, and I'm trying to raise this much money to help hungry people here and around the world. So by asking them to join you and to help with this goal, sometimes that really resonates with folks more than just saying, oh, I'm just going to sponsor Suzanne. I also found that people really react to goals. Back at a former job, I worked a lot with our sales folks. I was a support person and supported them with several different things that they did. And salespeople are very motivated for goals. So I would share my goal with them and say, I'm trying to raise this much money, and they really reacted to that. I have a feeling some of them didn't even know what they were donating to, because they would give me money and just say, we hope you make your goal. So you try to educate in the process, but hey, we're raising money for a good cause, and if they want to help me support my goal, then we'll go with that. I've also found that as I got close to my goal, sometimes people wanted to be the one who took me over the goal. So that was kind of fun too. So people do react to goals and like to be part of that. Also, as you shared your goals, you also want to make sure that you give updates to folks. So let them know how you're tracking towards the goal. You want to make sure that you thank everyone at the end. Let them know how you did. Let them know how the overall walk did. and share information about where the money goes. It's really an education part. As Bill said, I've gotten to go see where our money has gone, and that helped me even better share the stories and to say why this was important to me and why this was important to people around the world. But I think as people understand where their money is going, then they really feel like it's something they want to support. The other thing I found was, as I had people that I approached every year, I think that some people planned to give money to Crop Hunger Walk through me as part of what they did for the year. So it just became part of what their charitable donations were because they knew I was going to ask them each year. Next slide, please. And then one other thing is when you ask people, you want to ask and ask again. Now, not to the point that you're harassing folks, but my theory always was if somebody told me they were going to sponsor me, that gave me the right to follow up and remind them. In this day and age, people get emails buried, they have good intentions about something, and then they forget. So if you've told me you're going to sponsor me, I'm going to bug you until I get that sponsorship, or you say, oh, sorry, I didn't mean it, I'm not going to do it. So, you know, borderline on asking multiple times, because a lot of times people do want to do it, it gets lost. So asking multiple times is not a bad thing. And doing this through email makes it easy as well. And then you can kind of give them an update. Say, hey, I've made it this close to my goal. You said you were interested in sponsoring me. You know, can you help me make it over the line? Next slide. So what I'm calling my not-so-secrets to success are basically, to summarize, go online. It's an easy way to get donations. Ask everyone, and then ask and ask again. Next slide. And the reason for all this is because this is why we do what we do, and we do make a huge difference in the world. I've seen it. I met the lady in the top picture. She was so thrilled that she now had a well in her village, and she could get water much easier than she had before. I met the kids down at the school in Kenya in the picture below, and the money we raise makes a huge difference, and that's why it's important. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Suzanne. I know that if we don't get to all the questions that are being posted, you also are going to be getting some email, and we're putting your email up there now. And in fact, I think we'll leave that up for a moment while I introduce our next presenter, Larry Jackson, and then we'll move through the slides to the beginning of Larry's presentation. Larry grew up in Detroit, Michigan, graduated from Detroit Public Schools, and attended Hope College in Holland, Michigan. He then went on to Western Theological Seminary and graduated with a master's in divinity. He pastored churches for 23 years in the Reformed Church in America. He's married to his wife, Sarah. They have 2 grown children. And they're, I know, excited that this summer they will be adding a new daughter-in-law to their family. His first Crop Hunger Walk was in 1982 in Albany, New York. He coordinated Crop Hunger Walk for 19 years in Grand Haven, and then participated in the Holland Zealand, Flint, and Traverse City Crop Hunger Walks before coming on board with Church World Service as an associate director, and he's been with us now for nearly 6 years. Loving God and loving neighbors is the simple mantra that guides his life. Larry, thank you for joining us and for sharing about incentivizing your walk.
Well, I'm glad to be with you. You will see that we're going to be talking about multiplying the loaves and the fish, a scriptural model for incentivizing our Crop Hunger Walks. So that should be the first slide there. And most of us are familiar with the story, sometimes thought of as the feeding of the 5,000. I like to call it the boy who shared his lunch. And if you remember with me that particular instance, that Jesus had been teaching, and there were large crowds following him. It came to be lunchtime. They didn't have any resources other than a boy who was willing to have a couple of loaves and fishes that he shared. It was multiplied after blessing it, and one thing that we saw is that there was enough for all, and there was, in fact, leftovers. And so next slide, we can see that there's those affirmations that we can share, and then also be able to go and to adapt them and use them for incentivizing our crop hunger walks. So we recognize the need. We talked about that earlier in the first session today. We have compassion, which leads to action. We identify our resources. In the example that of Jesus, there was just a boy who was willing to share his bread and his fish. That we organize a partnership. In that particular verse that Jesus had the disciples go out and take sections of 50 and 100, and there they then were able to share those that bread and that fish that were multiplied. So if we go to the next section, next slide, how do we apply this model? Next slide. What we want to do is that we want to find somebody, whether it be a person, a church, a foundation, or a business, who is willing to share their lunch and wants to see it multiplied. Some people talk about multiplication. Some people talk about leveraging of gifts. Other people talk about the fact that in some way they want to see their walk incentivized. So if you go to the next slide, what we can talk about is how we identify the person and that we can bundle resources together. What we want to find is somebody who has a history of generous giving to the walk, or a business that would like to have its name associated with a positive community effort. Are there any relationships that committee members or team members have that might be able to be potential resources, a local church mission budget, or community or family foundations? I found that in walks I've been able to, and the team has been able to identify people in each of those different kind of sectors. Someone who has a generosity of spirit, some business that would like their name associated, community or team members that are able and willing to have their gifts shared, and then local church businesses or mission budgets. Next slide. One thing I'd like to just make sure and have you understand that there's no gift that is too small. I have a number of people who say, well, we don't have any big givers. I think that we could say that there's perhaps a person who's willing to share a $25, $50, $100 gift that in some way could be leveraged or multiplied or be an incentive. I've had a number of walks that had a $100 giver, and rather than that person giving $100 outright, they say, well, the first 10 people that sign up from our church, we have a donor who's willing to give them $10. And so rather than a $100 gift being given outright, you could have 10 new walkers incentivized to come forward and share in that $100 gift 10 ways. So what do you want to increase? Do you want to increase the number of walkers? Do you want to increase the walk income donations? Or do you want to increase the amount of funds raised online? So you have to identify the goal that you're looking for. Next slide. You want to communicate that goal. If that goal is emphasizing funds raised, you want to make sure that that's out to all of your recruiters, all of the people that are identifying what that walk is about. If the goal is to that you want more people to participate and raise money, I think that's an important addition. One thing that I found through experience is that we want to make sure that we say sponsored walkers, not just people showing up on the day of the walk and saying we'd like to walk, but in some way not only participating, but participating as a sponsored walker. And that you want to set a minimum amount to raise as part of the donor's criteria. Next slide. These are just some success stories that I want to share briefly. It gives you an idea of what the goal was, what the incentivizer was, and what the result was. So in this walk, there's a gift of $1,000 that would be given to the walk that raised the most funds. These were two communities that had similar walks. Both walks were at about the $15,000 range. And we had one donor who said, I will give $1,000 to the walk that raises the most funds. So each walk set a goal of $20,000. $20,001, and you'll see that both of them experienced 50% growth in 1 year. One went from about 16,000 to 24,000. The other went from about 14,000 to almost 20,000. The donor, in fact, shared a $1,000 gift with one of the walks and a $500 gift with the other walk. And so you can see that that actually generated almost 50% growth in both walks. So the net aspect of a $1,500 gift was about $13,000. So the donor was really happy, and the walk was just really inspired and encouraged, and walkers came forward. Next slide, please. We had a challenge of a gift of $20 would be given to every sponsored walker above 50 sponsored walkers. And that particular walk had 85 sponsored walkers show up on the day. A donor was willing to give a $500 gift that was identified prior to the walk. And so they had a $1,700 increase and an increase of 35 walkers. Next slide. There was a youth challenge in one of the communities that we shared. It was a community foundation that came together with an individual donor as well as a family foundation. So we bundled that particular incentive. Each gave a portion of almost $5,000, or I'm sorry, $2,000, and the gift of $25 would be given to each sponsored walker, youth walker, who raised at least $25. So we had 55 youth walkers, and that particular walk had an additional $1,375 given toward it because those young people walked. Next slide. This one was a very simple gift, a donor who said they'd give $500 if they reached their goal of $12,000. And you can see the growth. The walk raised more than $13,000 that year. So just that one little gift, or actually one large gift of $500, leveraged the walk and multiplied it so that it was, instead of a $8,000 walk in 2011, they reached almost $13,000 to $14,000. Next slide. A gift of $200 would be given to every new church group that participated in the year. We had a donor who was willing to give $1,000. They got 5 new groups, actually 8 new groups, and the walk went from about $35,000 to about $50,000. It's actually in the last 3 years. So, yeah, again, a success story. What they wanted to do was to get more groups to participate. That was the multiplier. A donor was happy to give a $1,000 gift, and they had 8 new walks participating. Next slide. And this was one other one. This was a community foundation. We'll share a dollar-to-dollar match to go to the recipient agency. This one's a little bit more difficult to do, or a little bit more, I don't know if difficult's the word, but it has to be worded in the correct way. So what the community foundation said is that they would like to equal the local allocation. And so the walk went from averaging about $3,000 to $12,000 for that incentive, and the local agency then has the local allocation doubled, or at least matched by the community foundation, so that local agency receives $6,000 a year. It helped the walk, it helped the local, and everybody was happy. Next slide. This was an online one. A gift of $1,000 was given if we raised $1,000 online, and you can see what happened there. So again, the challenge, identifying a giver, the challenge, and then the result. Next slide. This is finally just why incentivize. I think donors are happy to see their gift multiplied. Walk teams like having a specific goal to enthuse and enter people. Walkers are enthused. Their participation will be leveraged, multiplied, whatever you want to call it, and local agencies are grateful to benefit from the generosity of many. And so all of these things will help you and us in some way to say, how can we multiply the gifts that we are given? And so for more information, that's my information. And I just want to share with you that through this strategy or way of doing things, in the teams that I've been able to have do this, we've been able to raise about $250,000 over the past few years, just with the multiplication of funds and the loaves and the fish. So thank you.
Thank you, Larry, very much for that presentation as well, and thanks again to all three of you for the presentations you've given. I can tell you by the number of questions that have been typed in so far, we will not get through all of them in the next 10 minutes we have. It was the reason that we did put up the email addresses so you can email individual presenters. Hopefully you got those down. We had one or two people who were asking about the handouts. They were emailed to anybody who registered. However, if for some reason you don't have that email, the email that you used in order to get into the webinar to begin with, if you respond to that email, which came from James Arthur, you can ask for the handouts and he will resend that out again so that you'll get that. Just because I guess a few people seem to be missing them, and we want you to have those handouts after what you've heard. We're going to unmute all of our presenters, and there are some questions here that that we want to get some answers to. One of the ones here was from Frederick saying, our crop walk has been running for 15 years, and community members have gotten used to it. How can we capture the attention of the community anew and refresh our walk's appeal? Anybody who wants to handle that one?
This is Suzanne. I think always having some new kinds of goals could be a good incentive. So if you can think about how the walk has done in the past and figure out some sort of stretch goal and share that. Some things that we've done in the Boulder Walk is that we had awards that we gave out. One for the organization that raised the most money, one for the organization that had the most participation. I know in some communities, groups have had friendly challenges between two groups that were participating. I think any of those kind of things can get people more energized to do something they've been doing, but maybe to either raise more money or get more people involved.
Thank you, Suzanne. Judy, what non-religious communities can we tap into to participate in the walk? When you're doing your lead recruiter model, is that completely churches, or are there other groups that you reach out to in the community as well?
Yeah, we do the schools, especially middle school and high schools, and their service organizations, other service organizations. We have many businesses that want a walk team. It's just it's the education of the community, and the more they find out about it, the more press you can get. You know, we do banners across the road and all kinds of things to make people aware, and then they come forward and participate.
Okay. Others, Suzanne and Larry, what have you seen in terms of non-church groups getting involved?
I have a number of oops.
Larry?
Go ahead, Larry.
This is Larry. Go ahead.
Suzanne?
Okay. I was going to say that in Boulder, we have not had a whole lot of luck with non-church or synagogue-related things. I think some regions of the United States are a little more open to events like crop hunger walks and others. So we have not had a whole lot of luck with other types of organizations out here.
Larry?
I think that the greatest success that we've seen has been with National Honor Societies participating. We do have some service groups participating or local businesses, but from our vantage point, that's been more the success story in terms of having student groups participate.
Great. Thank you so much. One of the questions, Judy, for you was regarding your notebook that you use. Is that an Excel spreadsheet, a hard copy print type notebook, or do you provide it both ways?
Our database is done in Excel, but the rest of it's just plain Word.
So if folks are interested in actually the Excel database, just the basis of that, they could email you and get information on that?
Absolutely. We'd be glad to share.
And actually that answered the question that Thomas sent in asking, would your database blank without the records be available for using in our area?
Yes, we can send you a blank one if you would like to have that.
Last one. Okay. From Thomas, it seems that Suzanne raised money online all year long. Using online, do you set a deadline in the calendar as the goal, or an amount, or both?
I would usually kick off my actual fundraising usually around August for an October walk, but it was it was a year-round thing in terms of the fact that I then let people know how I did when I would send Christmas cards, and I would talk about Crop Hunger Walk activities and things that were going on with what Church World Service was doing throughout the year. But usually I would kick off my, set my goals, kick off my campaign in August, and then have it try to wrap it up by the walk in October. Sometimes, getting a few more follow-up donations sort of by the end of October. But I found that if you keep it as a finite amount of time, that makes it a more reasonable kind of thing to do.
Okay. Larry, I think this one you could respond to. Do you recommend that walks within a county or a region try to coordinate their activities and dates, and if so, how?
To coordinate their activities?
Yeah,
is that correct?
Yes.
Maybe you could go a little bit further on that?
I could if there was more printed there.
Okay.
I think the question relates to if you're one walk in a county and you maybe feel a little bit isolated, or you think you could take advantage of working together with others. Have you seen examples of where several walks have worked together within a county or an area, coordinating maybe their publicity, some of their other things, to improve all of their walks?
Yeah, I think that I have a county walk that's kind of unusual in the sense that they begin all the same day at 3 different locations, and they come together to one location. And so it's an interesting way to come from various parts of the county, and it becomes more inclusive. That's
terrific. Thank you. Judy, just so you know, this.
I also have.
Okay. Just to let Judy know that the group that's with you, Judy, you're unmuted, so we'll be able to hear all the background noise.
So sorry.
And Bill, I was going to say I have one other tip around, local groups walking and how you coordinate that. One year we had a nearby walk that was walking on a different weekend than the Boulder Walk was walking. And so when we had a few folks who said, oh, I can't participate in the Boulder Walk because I've got another commitment that day, we said, well, hey, you can go walk in the Brimfield Walk next week. So, letting people know that you aren't limited necessarily to the community walk that's in your community, just participating at all is really the goal. So sometimes sharing dates of local walks, even if they aren't on the same date, can be helpful.
Great. Thank you, Suzanne. We are just about at the end of our time, and I do want to close this out. I want to thank again Judy, Suzanne, and Larry for your willingness to share some of your ideas with us, and for your willingness to give your email addresses and contact information for folks to be in touch with you. I want to tell everyone who's participating, once again, this is the first ever national webinar that we've done around crop hunger walks, and we will be emailing to everyone who gave us an email address. We will be emailing an evaluation to you. If you are in one of the groups that have gathered to hear us today, you will be handed out an evaluation form there. We would ask you to fill these out because, one, we want to know if this was helpful. We want to know if we do them in the future, how could they be better, what would improve them. We realize sometimes technology is an issue and sometimes the timing is difficult, but we do the best that we can with that. But your input is really important to us, so we'd really like as many of you as possible to fill out the evaluation forms and get those back to us. So in closing, again, I just want to thank you for joining us today, and most of all, I want to thank you for all that you do, because you make a huge difference in this world for people who are hungry, for people in need. And we are thankful every day for our ability to work with you and to connect you with the communities we work with around the world. So thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.